welcome to Finally Game Music. This is episode 152. I am your host, Kristoffer Schenström, and together with me this week I have none other than Megan McDuffie. Hello, Megan.
Hey, how's it going?
It goes freaking well today. I'm just super excited to just have this conversation and interview with you today because I really like this soundtrack that we're going to talk about. I was just super excited about this soundtrack and also the game itself, but most likely what drew me into this game was your soundtrack for this one.
Awesome.
So I'm just totally excited just to talk and pick your brain and see what was your thoughts when you started creating this. But before we're going into that part, I usually have a little information about who you are. This is basically an information search I did online from interviews and what people write about you online. So I'm just going to go through this one, and after I'm done with that one, we will see what was correct, what was not so correct, and we will kind of discuss from there and take it from there. So.
Okay.
Who is Megan? Megan McDuffie is born in America, started out with her interest in both singing and instruments as far as she can remember. But at the age of 6, she turned to singing in her school talent show and wanted to learn as many instruments as possible. Megan began to take piano lessons when she was around 8 years old. Megan was naturally drawn towards the synthwave as she grew up in the 80s music, as you were always drawn to the synth Latin and the electronic sounds of the era. As she grew up, she became more and more immersed into music. It became a part of her. During her time in high school, she studied subjects as jazz, concert, show choir, and let's not forget musical production. Megan follows up the studies in the University of California, Santa Cruz, where she studies for a bachelor degree in composition, film scoring, and with a minor in electronic music. A solid foundation in production, musical theory, ear training, film scoring techniques, and more. And this is where she first aimed for composing for films, which were her initial focus. During her years in the university, she attended a composers convention in Los Angeles, where the film composer Hans Zimmer spoke. And to summarize what he said, he told everyone basically, if you have anything else to do, do it. The music industry is a terrible difficulty just to break into. And instead of being discouraged here, Megan found it oddly comforting, and there were no doubts in continuing down the path of music. After finishing university, Megan continues her studies in Berklee College of Music in 2010 and gets a master's certificate in orchestration for film and TV. And during her years in college, she also starts her professional career in 2011. What follows her professional life in composition is for commercials, short films, promo videos, and music for video games, where her first video game music on paper is Furious Ferglings, that released back in 2012. Video games that was always something Megan thought about, but she did put a lot of energy into film scoring, but a more natural shifted over later into video games. And in 2013, she composes additional music for games such as Roller of the Realms. In 2015, she does in production for Galaxy Heist and Solar Crusade. In 2016, it's an OST for Mimic Arena. In 2017, we have an in-production for Rose Razor and Plunge. In 2018, we get original music for the Unity game kits. We also get additional music for online slot games, Gravity and Gravity Dash. In 2019, we have music for games as Hostile Takeover, Legend of Rune, and The Professional, and finally today's game that we're going to talk about, River City Girls. And as final words before we get going again here, in 2018 you write in an interview on the topic, where would you like to take your musical career in the future? And your answer is the following: I've done some really exciting things in the past years, having already been doing musical professionally for the past 7 years and so. I like to love along this trajectory, scoring higher profile video games, composing and landing more Hollywood trailer music placements, collaborating with more well-known artists, and finally releasing an electronical album of my own. So first of all here, I want to just hear your own words. There have been some more years in 2018 when you answered this question. How do you feel now when you've gone 3 more years? How do you feel that you're going the right trajectory still?
That's a great question. And it's really funny to hear myself say those things back then because A, I wouldn't have remembered that. and B, I am super stoked to say that I actually achieved all of those things, which is pretty awesome.
That is really awesome. And when it comes to all the other information, was there something I did get incorrect or people had incorrect online here?
The only thing that was a little off was studying music production in high school. I did not study music production in high school. That actually was a very minimal part of my musical education. And as a necessity, it was something that I had to learn on my own, when I was in the career and, graduated college and was like, okay, now I need to be really competitive. I'm not in school anymore. So production-wise, I'm mostly self-taught.
Okay. That is really interesting. It's always fun to see more and more composers as well, even today in modern times, because if we're going back just a couple of years, like a generation or two, then we can already see that a lot of people were more self-taught. We don't see that more today, that today we usually go to school for most of the things. How did it feel for you to actually still be self-taught instead of learning this through education or school?
Well, like I said, it was a complete necessity because I had the musical foundation, I had the theory, I had the compositional skills, but to make things actually sound good and be ready for licensing and, radio and TV and stuff, that was a whole different process. So, it was at first very challenging, but thanks to the ever-expanding wealth of knowledge that is online, I was able to teach myself and get feedback from other people who I felt were better than me and grow from there. And it's been really awesome. And now, just in a few short years, I've really kind of made the step into, I guess, being really comfortable with my mixing skills because people are coming to me now to ask for mix advice. So that's been great.
That is great as well. You can get it almost on paper that you're doing something great and you're becoming better as well as a producer, most specifically here. But how does it feel for you specifically to have more and more people coming to you to ask for advice rather than the other way around now?
Well, it's awesome. It's very validating to all of the years of study and all of the years of, being a musician. It's great. It's so weird because it's all about perspective, where even now I feel like I'm not quite where I want to be, but I am, to someone else who's just starting out, I'm at the top of my game. So it's a little bit funny.
It seems like you've been through so freaking much on these years already, and it feels, as you said, it feels like you're so early still in your game.
Yeah, there's a lot left to accomplish. Sure.
So it's just exciting just to. You started out with film and short movies and such and commercials. What you kind of had a natural overstep towards video game music, and from what I understand, you were played quite a bit of video games back in the day as well.
Yeah, I sort of did. I actually didn't really grow up with video games. It wasn't until I think 8th grade, I was probably 14 years old, and my dad got a Nintendo 64, and that was kind of my first introduction to video games. Okay. So I didn't grow up as a child with any systems really. And Yeah, it was a real natural evolution. I did start out, really being focused on film scoring.
Mm,
That's really what I wanted to do, but the industry is pretty different from the game industry, and um, I guess it's more of a closed system. Hollywood's
okay.
very, very elite and
Mm,
closed down, and I think it's changing now, but back in 2011, 2012, when I was just really getting going,
mhm.
it was just harder to, crack that crack that code, crack the relationship thing. There's I don't know. I think I was just supposed to go down this route, and that's why it happened.
Mm. Because I know for a fact, as I'm a game developer myself, I know it is quite closed, even still with game development as well. I know the video game scene and I know movie scene has like this indie kind of thing going on as well. Was it easier just to break in video games than like the indie movie scene, for example?
I think it's probably not the case for everyone,
Mm,
but for me, it was only due to the fact that it seemed like there were more video games being produced than
mm,
films.
okay.
Because you can have a solo developer who creates something amazing, like Undertale, for example.
Yeah.
But with a film, you hardly have any single person going to create a short film that, goes on to win awards. That rarely happens. So
Yeah.
just from a production standpoint, there are so many more games happening at any given moment than there are
Mm,
films. So I think that presents more opportunities if you know where to
mm,
look and if you know who to talk to.
yeah. Yeah. No, that sounds nice. Sounds really nice to have a more open kind of market to interact with as a composer as well. Since you have been working in both of the areas now, which one is the biggest difference, would you say, when it comes to making music and composing for film rather than video games?
Well, from a technical standpoint, video games, you have to keep in mind the player experience and it being a lot less linear. So with a
Mm,
film, you sit down and you watch it from beginning to end, usually.
mm,
And, the music goes from point A to point B and takes you on this linear journey. Whereas the game, you can revisit levels, you can stay in levels
mm.
indefinitely. Like if you are just, trying to get XP and you're grinding away.
Or if you
Um,
really like the music.
or if you really like the music from a specific area, sure. Um, so that sort of changes the thinking process for me.
Mm,
In that, I have to compose in loops, I have to compose in layers,
mm.
and think about music repeating over and over and not getting boring.
Yeah. Do you feel that this is something that suits your character a little bit as a composer as well, or do you find it sometimes hard to compose video game music?
um, it. I don't know. I think it's a project or it's a by project
Mm,
basis because some things are a little more challenging
yes.
than others, but overall, it's not that different. I just kind of do my thing.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So, I think we're getting a little bit of a good glimpse of who you are, if the information now was correct. And I think we should dive deeper a little bit into the River City Girls soundtrack.
All right, let's do it.
So, with that said, let's give a little bit of an introduction of what River City Girls is. So, River City Girls is a beat 'em up game, which is basically kind of a sequel or spiritual sequel to the River City Ransom games. But in River City Girls, you're playing two girl characters, and you're basically trying to find your boyfriends, which is the characters from the River City Ransom games. And yeah, you're basically going around just kicking some butts, grabbing weapons along the way, and just enjoying this amazing music. And that kind of sums it up. We're going to go through 5 tracks today, and these are going to be played throughout the game in different kind of sections of the game as well. So with that said, I think we're diving into the first track of the week then. So we're going to listen to VIP. That was the first track of the week, VIP. So, as I explained to Megan, but I'm going to explain to everybody else who's listening out there as well, I usually take up what I call the inner journey. And this is basically me listening to this specific track, closing my eyes and just enjoying this track to my fullest. So, for VIP, my inner journey, an electrical car ride that had me swinging from side to side. A chilling, yet very danceable track. It does give me some happy vibes that could only be named as synthwave version of Mega Man music. So this was my inner journey.
Love that.
So when it comes to specifically this track, I really like the kind of mellowness that came with this track, because that's what kind of had me vibing from side to side going. How was your thought when you started producing this one?
Probably very similar to the rest of the soundtrack, which was first thinking about the area of the game that I was in, kind of what the vibe of the level was going to be, and just pulling up some of my favorite sounds and going from there. It's funny. I just sort of start and whatever comes out, comes out.
Yeah, because early in the game development here, I read that you got level description and you usually get character artwork. So I'm guessing for bosses and stuff like that to kind of get into mood of what you're going to kind of have for kind of melody and so on for the specific area.
Yeah, more just like the general feel of the area. Whether it's run down, whether it's really a rich area, things like that.
Because in this game we have multiple different areas. I don't specifically remember the VIP area, which one that was on, because I usually vibing to each and every track all the time. But guessing VIP, I think it is later in the game, because you, as you said, you have a little bit more richer areas in the end of the game.
Yeah, I would guess that is accurate, because I kind of tried to keep the track titles in line with where they were going to end up.
Nice. So when it came to track titles, you were the one who actually named them in the end yourself, or were they together with the other? Because from the information I understood, you got recommended to this project by Dale North, which you were collectively with through Materia Collective.
That is correct. Yeah, but all of the tracks that I produced were my own creations, and
yes.
I named them.
Yeah, nice. Because you have a couple of features within this album. First of all, this is an album of a total of 50 tracks, which is freaking insane in my opinion. I just love being able to have that many tracks on a CD.
It's a big one.
Yeah, definitely, because you don't see that every day happening, and just producing so many tracks for a title such as this one is just amazingly work as well. So before I'm kind of going deeper into this one about features and everything, how was it to actually get to know that you're going to work on so many tracks for an album or for a game?
Well, it was a little bit daunting, but it was also very exciting, because I knew that I would have such a big, stake in this project, and
Mm,
I'd be able to really call it my own. So that part was exciting. But yeah, at
yeah.
the beginning, initially, I was like, "Oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? This is crazy."
Yeah, because the time frame, if I remember correctly, because I have not written it down, but it was 9 months, right?
Yeah, so I was producing like 3 to 5 tracks every month.
Mm. Because I remember reading that you did produce at least 1 to 2 tracks each week, and that would be basically what you said per month, which is
Yep, that
insane.
sounds about right.
Was it already? Did you already know that you were going to make 50 tracks in the beginning, or was that something that kind of grew in time as well?
I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that I generally knew that they wanted 4 instrumental tracks and
Mm.
1 vocal track per area. And
Okay.
yeah, so from the get-go, I knew it was going to be a very hefty project.
Yeah, that kind of goes into another question I have for a later track, but we're getting there as well. We're not gonna jump things here. But also in these tracks, we actually have some other artists featured here. For example, we have the intro, we have the boss themes, and a couple of other remixes or arrangements. So we have features with Nate Swan's Battle, Christina V, Chipsel, and Dale North. I was going to try and speak about this later in the episode, but I think it's hard to kind of avoid stepping on the toes of these featuring artists here. From what I understand from your answers already now, but also what I read before, you actually did not work with any of them personally.
Correct. Yeah, they did their thing, and I did my thing separately, and the album came together kind of at the end after all the work was done. So yeah, the reason, this is so weird, but it's very confusing to have so many artists on a release from a distribution standpoint. So the reason that I had to have my name on the tracks that other people produced was simply, this is the only reason, and the reason is that otherwise Spotify would not put the soundtrack on my profile.
Oh, interesting. That
It's
is
the only reason.
and you
Otherwise,
need to have it on
otherwise,
each title
yeah.
track.
Otherwise, it would have ended up in various artists, and it would not have been a release on my account, which was important because 90% of it is mine. So that is the only reason my name is on the tracks with those other artists. So if you see somebody else's name, they produce the track.
Okay.
I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about this in the end, because the last one is actually one of these featuring tracks. But I think it's more important that we do talk about it later as well, feelings and everything, and how it felt to kind of do a featured album together with other people as well, because it's always interesting in my opinion. But I know you already answered this a couple of times, not today, but for other like interviews and such. But when you got into this project, you actually got into it thanks to Dale North. Could you talk a little bit about the introduction you got and what drove you into this project?
Sure, yeah. So Dale and I were just passing acquaintances, really. I hadn't even really met him in person. But he was good friends, or he is good friends with some of the people over at Wayforward. And he was talking with Adam, who was one of River City Girls' directors. And Adam was telling Dale, or asking, saying, hey, do you know anyone who has a, kind of retro 80s or synth pop sort of style? And Dale was like, oh, yeah, actually, there's this one lady, Megan, in this video game music collective that I'm part of. And Dale and I had never really spoken, but somehow he knew my style. I guess he had heard something I did before. I don't even know. So he recommended me for that job that I guess was opening up, and Adam got in touch with me and said, hey, Dale recommended you for this. Do you have more examples of your work? And sent over a bunch of stuff, and he was impressed, and the rest is history.
Oh, that is really nice as well to just hear you say it as well. I've been reading a little bit here and there in interviews and such, but it's always nice to hear the composer itself talk about it, how it goes, and so on. Because as you got in contact with Alex here, and you produced actually the first song, I actually read on Wayforward's interview about this one, where you basically sent over the first track that you did for this. We're not going to listen to it today, and I'm kind of sad that I noted this after I picked all the tracks, but the first one you actually did for the album was the track Unseen, which is also a vocal track.
Yes.
How come you started out with a vocal track and maybe specifically Unseen?
Well, it's a good question. So yeah, I mean, they wanted to sort of vet me for the entire soundtrack because it was such a lot of work. So they wanted to make sure that my style was going to match and that we were going to work well together. So they gave me a test track, and they gave me a bunch of reference material and said, okay, do something kind of like this in this general vibe. And Adam, the director, one of the directors, knew that I was also a vocalist, and he thought it would be cool to have some vocal tracks, especially since one of the bosses in River City Girls is a rock star. So the idea sort of later morphed into, oh, what if all of these vocal tracks are sung by Noise, the rock star character? And it's so funny, I'd have to go back through my emails to double check, but I think that kind of came later. But Adam was a fan of my voice, so he wanted me to do a vocal track just because they knew they wanted some vocal tracks, but I don't think it was attached to Noise specifically until a little bit later. I think that's just, I did what they wanted. They wanted to see if the style was going to be a good match, and they wanted to know kind of how the vocal tracks were going to sound, and so they gave me that just from the beginning.
That's nice. Do you remember any of the reference material that you did get? Was it from other games, or was it more synthwave generic music, or?
It was a few synth pop vocal tracks. They gave me a track by the band Churches, band Nightclub. I think there was a Miley Cyrus song and a Taylor Swift song, but just very small, specific pieces of those that had, really cool synth bass lines or something like that. So
okay, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that is actually really nice to have these kind of glimpses and pieces as well. So you kind of get like Lego pieces that you can piece around for a kind of a good setup, that kind of a baseline, so to speak.
Yeah,
and with that said, I think because you named Noise here, I think we need basically to go in on the first vocal track of the week. So I think it kind of stems in perfectly together with it, so we can actually hear your voice inside of one of these tracks. So with that said, we're going to listen to the track Bully.
Won't play nice.
And there we had the first vocal track of the week, Bully. So my inner journey for this one. A vocal track mid-gameplay? This intrigues me. Yet another chilling but kind of a dark track due to the Bully thematic. But the placement of the song gives it a more well-rounded connection. A smooth criminal track.
Nice.
Yeah, this one is kind of interesting. First of all, this is not you like game-wise, not singing. This is actually the boss character Noise, which we have not met at this moment yet, because you are listening to this track quite early in the game, because this track is basically played in the school where you are starting out. And usually school is the time we usually get bullied or people are bullying. How come they wanted a track like this about bullying?
So that was all me. They pretty much gave me free reign to do what I wanted, as long as the general, instruments and style was in the synth pop genre. And lyrically, they were just kind of like, well, you know what the game's about, so fit it in there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. Bully just kind of came out of the ether. I started writing it. I've always loved that sort of driving triplet feel. So it's in 4, but you have each beat broken up into 3. So you get the da 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 da. You get the 3, the pulse of 3, and I've always loved that style and that rhythm. So,
I really like it myself as well.
Thank you.
Kind of
always
thumping good together with the vocals.
It always sort of evokes sort of a swagger. So, this game overall is just totally about attitude, right? Every character has got an attitude.
Definitely.
So I kind of wanted to hit people over the head with that, with that rhythm, and everyone's beating each other up. So to me, that just Bully came to mind.
Oh, that's nice. So one of the things I read about that this track was actually and may still be one of your favorite vocal tracks of the album. How come it is?
I think it's partially that triplet rhythm that I previously mentioned, and just like I said, that attitude. It was, I don't know, something about it. It's got a little more oomph to it. Maybe I'm slightly biased because it was, it's like it hits you over the head in the very first few minutes of the game.
Yeah.
And also, it was one of the easiest tracks to write for the entire album. And I don't know why that happens for some tracks and not others. Some are, kind of a struggle, and I'll, have to start over a couple times, or I'll have to really massage it to make it work. But this was one that just sort of came out. I kid you not, this track I probably finished in about 6 hours total, from nothing to final mix. I don't know why. it came out. So
maybe you have a little bully inside of you that just wanted to get the story out.
Had some pent-up rage.
Yeah. So I guess for this track, you basically get the references of maybe the boss of the school area, and also the school area thematic here.
Yeah, I think just Bully fits with the whole school thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with that one. I kind of pointed it out as well as we were talking about it. So I don't think we can kind of go around circles on this all the time here. So one thing that kind of intrigues me as well, usually as people or as composers work the first track usually sets like a red string throughout the rest of the album. But I feel kind of there are some differences between Unseen and Bully, for example, in my opinion. How did it feel to make like a vocal track first as Unseen and then make Bully later? Did you feel that you still had the same connection in between them, or did you want to differentiate the tracks themselves as well due to all the different areas?
So I started working on Bully a little bit farther along in development than Unseen, because Unseen was right at the beginning. I hadn't seen any gameplay I hadn't really seen much artwork. I didn't have any of
Mm,
the level descriptions. It was kind of just a test to see if the styles were going to match. So the time I got to Bully, after a few instrumental tracks that I had already done,
mm,
I had a better feel of that, the grit and the attitude of the game. So yeah, it was just I was a little bit more into it, I guess, if that makes sense. Like I understood the game better at that point, and so Bully, ended up a little bit different, had a little more
mm.
swagger than Unseen, just because I was a little bit more into development.
Yeah. So usually when it comes to video game music and such, we don't have that many musical or tracks that actually utilize vocals as you are playing the game. Usually have vocals in an epilogue, a credit screen, or a main screen, or in a cinematic. It doesn't happen that often that we have vocals during gameplay. How do you feel? Did you feel about having vocals in actual gameplay and not in a cinematic and such?
Well, I thought it would either be really unique and interesting and
Mm.
catch people's attention in a good way, or converse of that, which was it would be awkward and strange. So I trusted, I trusted Wayforward, that it would work, and luckily it did.
Yeah. So in the end, I guess you have played the game today, at least.
I have played some of it. I have
Mm.
not played all of it. In fact, I am a little embarrassed that I haven't played more.
A great game to play with your husband, or maybe he will go crazy while playing it. Not this track again.
Yeah, he's definitely heard the music a lot more than he has played the game, for sure.
No, because I was thinking, like, what was your initial thing when you actually were able to play the game and actually hear the music inside the game for the first time as you were playing it?
It was a very weird experience. So, um, before the game was officially released,
Mm,
I took a trip to LA for some networking. I think I was maybe shooting a music video at the time, but
okay.
I stopped over at Wayforward, and one
Mm,
of the other directors, Bannon, was like, "Hey, you want to play River City?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, I do." So we're in the break room, like on the back couch, starting up the game, and what kind of first hits you is the menu music. And I was
mm.
like, "Oh my god, this is real." Like this, I did that. It's real. I can't believe it. So it was a really surreal experience.
Oh, nice. No, that one is actually a pretty nice feeling that you get when you. For me, I'm working with level design on my daily time, and just seeing like new levels come to life and getting dressed and everything. I was just so just listening to something. For example, when you're listening to music, of course, you can have interactive kind of experience as you first of all everybody else has a subjective kind of feeling towards all the music and what's happening in the game, but if we're looking from the composing structure here, as you are basically you're putting the music in there, and then maybe the audio director gets back, oh, I want to change this and that and so on, and then you put the fixed track back, and oh, this is all great, and then it gets implemented in the game and you never hear it until you play the
Yeah.
game.
Right. Yeah, that's why it was so weird. It was like, I'd been working on this massive project for months,
Mm,
and my part was done. The game hadn't come out yet. They were still working on the last, pieces of it.
mm, mm.
So it was such a trip to be able to kind of experience it with sound design and the art and the gameplay. It was bizarre.
Did you ever, throughout the development of the game, did you ever get like video clips sent to you with like in production development video with together with the music, so you can get a better feeling of the game itself together with the music? Or were you in
I
the blind
did.
and
No, I was completely in the dark. The only things that I got were the anime cutscenes,
okay.
which at the time didn't have my music because I needed the clips to score to.
Mhm.
So those were the only pieces that I actually saw.
Okay. Oh, nice. Nice.
I think I did get Noise's fight without any audio because her fight is very time-based.
Mm,
So I had to see sort of how that mechanic was going to work
okay.
before I started on that track.
But when it comes to Noise's battle, a lot of the battles I noticed that you have Shipple's feature name on. When it came to Noise, were you the one who worked solely on that one?
Yes, Noise is the only boss fight that I did myself.
Was this due to the fact that you are also voicing her?
Yeah, in part. I think they wanted, or they knew from the beginning they wanted a vocal track there, so it made sense for me to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, because when it comes to each and every boss battle is unique, very unique in their own way, and especially Noise, because you're basically having like a guitar battle, guitar hero
Yes,
battle.
I love how they designed that fight. It's super cool.
Definitely, it really stuck out of everything, and it felt to didn't really pay attention that much to the vocals in it. So I never actually in the tracks we're listening to throughout the game.
Makes sense. Yeah, the boss fights are not easy.
And I get so super focused in games, so I kind of blur into the whole experience, like fully into it and just avoiding and
Yep.
trying to beat the shit out of Noise. So I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
for
I'm gonna
sure.
beat the shit out of you.
It's okay.
We can bully each other some other time.
There you go.
Just to get that in. But yeah, I think it's time. We've been talking for about almost 12 minutes now. I think it's time for the next track of the week here. So we're getting to the middle of the whole shebang here. So the next track we're going to listen to is Asuke. Asuke. So, my inner journey for this one, a very dancey track with a swinging melody. The track comes with its highs and lows, but it makes the highs so much better. I couldn't add much more. I was like, if I'm going to say something else, I'm gonna make this song like a god or something. Because damn, this one is freaking swinging like hell. I'm just swinging from side to side. I was sitting here right now when we were listening to it, going from side to side in my chair here, trying not to make too much sound.
The groove is too strong.
Yeah, very. So I guess if your husband was swinging to something, he was thinking about this song most likely. I'm just guessing here.
Yeah, he did like this one, definitely.
Yeah. And you did like this one as well, if I'm going to quote you on this one. This was actually,
Yes.
and may still be, one of your favorite instrumental tracks of the album.
It is.
This is just random that I did place two of your favorite songs right next to each other.
Yeah, this does. Yeah, this one kind of has a special place in my heart. I don't know, especially why this one. I think I love how it came together, even though it was one of the tracks that gave me some trouble at the beginning.
So, with that said, I'm guessing that it wasn't as clean as Bully was, with it just a six-hour production.
It was not. No, this one took me 2 or 3 days. I started, I didn't like it, I started over. At this point, I had written almost all of the soundtrack. This was, it ended up in game sort of in the last level too. So I had written the bulk of the soundtrack already, and I was just so fried. I was like, I've written everything there is to write. I don't know how I'm going to do this. What is going to make this different? And, with just a lot of persistence and taking breaks and listening to other music that had nothing to do with this game, I was able to produce this one, and it turned into something really fun. I think once I found the vibe, once I was like, okay, yes, now I understand where this is going. And, from that point on, it became easier.
But when it comes to producing so many tracks and so on, we kind of have this synthwave 80s style kind of era music going on with this game. It basically is an homage to Civil Ransom, which is a 80s game as well. So kind of makes sense. But when you're making so much music and everything, how did you kind of attack the problematic of not making any song sound like the other one?
I mean, it was a challenge. It definitely was a challenge because I wanted the album to sound consistent. So I used a lot of the same plugins, a lot of the same synths, the same like 3 or 4 drum kits so that it would have a cohesiveness throughout the whole soundtrack. But, I just tried my best to not do anything that sounded the same. I didn't really have a specific method. I just did whatever came out, and luckily I didn't self-plagiarize.
Well, I hope you're not if you did, I hope you're not going to sue yourself.
That would be very awkward.
It's like waking up one day, but God damn it, I'm gonna sue. No, but when it comes to making so much music and everything, I think it's amazing just to make this much. I've said it a couple of times already as well. But one thing that I usually talk to other composers about when they are working with this, you usually have a pretty good conversation together with the developers. And in this case, how much conversation did you actually have with the developers? Were they kind of hard to work with sometimes, where you couldn't really find the kind of thing they were looking for some tracks, for example? Or
that's a good question.
Just get free reins?
Yeah, that's a good question. From the get-go, they trusted me to find my own sound within the parameters of the genre that we were going to go for. And typically, I would send them 2 to 4 tracks once. I think maybe I would send them one at a time, but I think I would send them sort of a little small batch of music and get feedback for each one. And usually the feedback was really simple, like, make this instrument something else because it sounds weird, or change the mix a little bit here, or, extend this part. But overall, they were really easy to work with, and they liked my style from the get-go. So it wasn't hard to please them and make it work. Yeah.
So we already kind of said about Asuke that you had a little bit of a problem working it, finding the right melody for it. But when it comes to instrumental and vocalized tracks on this game, which one were actually the hardest one to kind of bring forth into the game, or kind of find their identity with?
I think overall, I would say I had a little more of a challenge with some of the instrumental tracks, simply because there were so many more of them.
Yeah.
The vocal tracks, there are only a handful, but the instrumental tracks make up the bulk of the soundtrack. So I had more chances to get stuck, if that makes sense.
I understand. No, I totally understand. Since, well, how many songs was it? 4, you said, for each area and 1 vocal, if I remember correctly?
Yes. Yeah.
And just finding 4 tracks to just one area, still kind of containing the identity of the tracks themselves. Was there supposed to be any bigger difference in between these 4 tracks? Like one should be a fighting track, one should be when you've beaten all the enemies, and so on. Were there
No,
any
not really.
idea for the tracks?
Not for the individual tracks within an area. Only in the the area itself having an identity. So within that, I had free reign with the 4 tracks to.
Okay.
Most of them were upbeat. That was kind of a requirement for this kind of game. So that was pretty much it. It's like, make it danceable, make it, punchable.
Yeah.
The energy.
Oh, I love the word punchable in this case. Yeah, so just to kind of inform everybody else that are listening to this podcast, that within this game we basically said areas, but let's kind of define them as regions, because the areas themselves are basically for each and every zone. So if we're going to talk about the school, for example, which is the starting area, you have the classrooms, you have the swimming pool area, and then you have the diner area, and then you have kind of the big boss fight area. So, and that kind of defines the region of the school itself. So we kind of have all the different tracks, the 4 tracks plus the vocal one, within these walls, so to speak. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So then people kind of get what we're after here when they're listening to the whole album later, because they should.
Yes, I agree.
So when it comes to other tracks, were there any specific track that you were really struggling with, or was SK the one you struggled with the most?
SK was definitely the one I remember struggling with the most. I think Wrong Turn and Drive were the other 2 that I didn't necessarily struggle with, but I remember getting the most feedback for changes on those 2 tracks. Shoot, I just had a thought and it slipped away. Oh, a couple of the tracks were sort of remixes, rearrangements, reimaginings, if you will, of some older River City universe, games that only came out in Japan, as far as I know. So for those, I actually find it easier to compose brand new melodies and come from my own brain than to try to take somebody else's melodies and rework them into my own style. So I remember, I believe it's Fancy Fight that has this sort of really fast Baroque style melody going throughout it. And that's one of these homage tracks, as they referred to at Wayforward, where I'm homaging another piece of music that came from one of these older games. I transposing that by ear, because there's no sheet music for it or MIDI that I can grab, was very tedious. I was going note by note, like, what is this track doing? And it's so quick that it was kind of a pain in the ass, but it worked out. But yeah, that kind of thing. The remixes, or the restylings of the older tracks. There are only a handful, but those gave me some difficulty.
So these are the hardments that a composer may interact with in their time of making video game music.
Yes.
When crazy developers think, hey, we're going to do homages, and you're going to fix the music in your style.
Yep, you're going to take this melody and make it synth pop. Okay.
But I guess that it was Wayforward who pulled the tracks that you were going to make homages of, or did you have like free roam there as well to make homages to 1 or 2, 3 tracks from a pool or something?
It was indirectly Wayforward. I believe it was their Japanese partners over at Arc System Works who sent along their selections, and then Wayforward gave those to me. They're like, okay, our higher ups want these, so have at it.
What was your first kind of initial thought when you got that kind of thing? It's like, hey, you're not going to work on your own kind of thing, but you're going to do your own thing on top of this.
I had done some sort of similar things before with the Materia Collective, actually, but I had my choice of what I was going to be remixing for those. I don't know, I thought it was interesting. I thought it was kind of cool that they were going to sprinkle in some tracks from the older games. I think that was kind of fun for fans of the River City universe. Like a little Easter egg, I guess.
Yeah. And more on River City Ransom a little bit later, because I've seen a little bit of information about that game as well in connection with you. So before we're going to talk about that, I think it's time for the next track here. So we're going to listen to Skull Kraken. Skull Kraken. So my inner journey for this track, a more laid-back, minimalistic thumping track that is more of a reminder to the rest of the soundtrack. This track also reminds me bass-wise of the Crypt of the Necrodancer, which in kind of retrospective here now, a game that Chipsel also did a rearrangement on.
Yes, she did.
Yes, she did. And yeah, we did talk a little bit fast about the featurings in this track as well, for this album, so to speak. That Chipsel actually did some of the boss themes. So I kind of feel funny that I kind of, because of the bass-wise, because it has this kind of rhythmic thing that they do in Crypt of the Necrodancer, because it's so bass. Well, it is a rhythm game.
True. It's got a great soundtrack.
Definitely. It's one of my favorite ones, and I really want to speak with Danny, so...
Yes, if you do speak with Danny, tell him I said hi, and that he doesn't know me, but I'm a fan.
Yeah, I think we all are.
I tried to follow him on Twitter once, and he didn't follow me back.
Aw, I'm still following him.
No. Well, that's good.
I don't care if he's following me.
I was a little bit like, damn it, I'm a colleague. You should follow me too. But it's all good.
It's all good. Yeah. One day, hopefully.
Yes.
So
you know a lot of the same people.
Yeah. So what was your initial thinking about the skull cracking? As I said, it feels a little bit more minimalistic to what else we hear on the album.
It does, yeah. This was one of the earliest tracks that I did for the soundtrack, and I hadn't quite found the sound yet, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I had only done, I think, 2 or 3 pieces before I did this one. So I hadn't quite decided that I could add a lot of melodic elements. I was still kind of in the mindset that this was background music and that I couldn't step on the toes of dialogue or sound effects, which definitely changed later on in the soundtrack as I got more and more comfortable with the project as a whole and understood the identity of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was just one of the earlier tracks, which is why it sounds a little bit more minimal than some of the other ones.
Was there any track that you actually did revisit at any time, or was the train just moving forward all the time?
The train definitely kept moving. Once Wayforward gave me their feedback, if any, then I sort of, dusted my hands and said, okay, it's done.
Okay. Interesting. No, because even though this is kind of a more of a minimalistic one, I really do enjoy the kind of minimalistic thumping that it does have, because it kind of gives a better kind of rhythm thing when you're going around, well, cracking skulls. Because basically, I don't know exactly where this track is. It could basically be anywhere in the whole game, but I'm
Could be.
guessing it is for a specific area within the game. And my guess would be the suburbs to some extent.
Might be. But like I said, I haven't played more than a couple hours of the game, so it's hard to remember where some of these things are, especially if I've never played that part.
Yeah, that will only make it harder to know.
Yes, indeed.
One thing, but this could kind of have already been answered as well, but listening to this song, actually in the end of the track, it actually kind of goes down and gets to nothing quite fast in the end. It kind of has an abrupt ending. It doesn't really loop around like all the other songs, in my opinion. Was this only due to that you haven't found the signature kind of thing for the soundtrack yet?
I guess so. It's hard to remember what I was thinking 3 years ago.
Definitely. Some things we do remember, some things we don't really care that much about. But that is life, basically. So
Yes. Yeah. So to answer your question, I don't have an answer.
yeah, and I'm okay with that, because people do forget, and not everything is super important. I just love to ask these like super weird questions sometimes, because it do make you guys think about what you did, and kind of gives a better feedback to yourself as well. What actually did I think about when I did this?
Definitely.
And then you all figure out, oh, I didn't think at all.
Yeah. Most of the time, that's the case.
Now that I think about it, it was all a blur for 9 months. But when it comes to the soundtrack in whole, I mean, 9 months is a long time working on a soundtrack, but especially working for that many tracks as well, it takes a toll on you. How did you feel after you actually were done with the album as well?
Well, part of me was somewhat relieved because I had just done a ton of work over many months. So it was rewarding in and of itself to just have completed such a giant project. The other part of me was very excited because I couldn't wait to share what I had been working on for so long with the world. And that I had hopes that it would have the potential that I thought it did. And luckily, people's reactions were even better than I had hoped. So that worked out really well. And I'm still grateful. But yeah, it was part of me was relieved. The other part was excited. And another part of me felt kind of sad that it was over because, my brain automatically was like, oh crap, now I need another project, like right away. Oh no.
Oh, I need more job.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about freelancing is that when you are super, super busy, you still have to be trying to plan 3 months ahead and looking for jobs at the same time that you're in crunch mode. So it can be crazy.
I'm just thinking that it could be also kind of interacting together with the development of tracks as well, having that kind of pressure as a composer that, oh, I need to search for the next job and work at the same time, unless you're, well, in-house composer.
Right, and that is a very rare and coveted position that never opens up to the public.
Yeah. It usually goes well. Most of the works or disciplines that actually is acquired to game development, usually most of them are just in-house, like referrals and so on. It's really hard and rare to see so many people. And I'm just guessing when it comes to composers and like freelancing work and everything, it is actually really hard to just find work at the same time as well, and even harder than game developers, for example.
It's always hard to find any sort of audio position,
Mm,
whether that's, just through word of mouth or through a job posting. But yeah, you
mm,
never see audio jobs pop up. It's just, it's because everybody wants to do those jobs.
mm,
And
mm.
usually you only need one sound designer or one composer that can
Yeah,
do everything. It's not, you don't need a whole team of developers. So
yeah.
you have a shot at one little seat.
Mm. So when it comes to, you're basically only working with music, or do you do some sound effects as well?
I have done some sound design. I enjoy it, but not as much as music. So
Mm,
you know, I I tell people that I only do music because I don't really want to start doing sound design.
mm, mm,
A lot of the trailer music I do is sound design. So I kind
mm.
of get my sound design fix there because I get to sort of marry the two things. Since trailer music is, by and large, sound design and less melody oriented.
So it kind of becomes like a guilty pleasure. You kind of want to do sound design, but not that much of it. You don't want to overtake it. You want to still compose mainly.
Yeah, I don't want to stretch myself too thin. I want to
Mm,
focus on one thing and be known for one thing as
yeah.
opposed to being like, "Oh, Megan can just do everything." Oh, I mean, I within a certain pocket, I do everything. But yeah, I'd rather get hired to do music, which is
Mm.
my passion.
But when it comes for this specific project with River City Girls, did you do the trailer music for that one as well, or did they just mix and match together with what do they already have from you?
They just used whatever they wanted from the
Mm,
soundtrack.
okay, nice. So, and also another question that I want to speak more generally about you when it comes to working with projects. There's a lot of different ways, and I don't want to specifically ask about this one because it's a touchy subject to some, and sometimes it can also be an NDA kind of thing. But do you usually like to work through a contract or project-wise, or how do you usually prefer to work? Do you work on budgets and so on?
So, if it's a client that's coming to me, usually,
Mm,
independent person
yeah.
coming to me, I do have my own contracts, which, um, I try to retain the rights to my own work.
Mm, mm,
Um, but for bigger projects like Wayforward,
mm,
and I think this is kind of applicable to most of the game industry, as far as I know.
mm,
When they hire freelance contractors like me, it's a work for hire. So
yeah.
they own everything so that they can do whatever they want with it and not have
Mm,
to,
mm,
run into any tricky legal things later. So, um, yeah, so I mean, we negotiated rates and things from the very beginning before
mm.
I did any of the work, and they sent me their contract because they
Okay.
are obviously a larger corporation than I
Yes.
am as an individual. So I kind of have to play by their rules for
Yeah.
a project of this scale.
Yeah, because the reason why I'm asking is because I've met so many different kind of composers, and they all kind of have their own kind of story. I know there are a couple of composers that are really, it's like their core kind of question that they always want to own the rights to their own music that they are composing. But in
Mhm.
certain cases, for example, with Way Forward, that it's not that possible to have that kind of power sometimes. But sometimes they might just be so hard-handed that, oh, of course, you can have the rights, but and then make like a super special contract, like, yeah, you own the rights, but we can use it for whatever we want as long as we're using it, for example.
Right. I actually have a composer friend who turned down a job for Ubisoft
Mm?
because he couldn't retain any of his rights.
Okay.
So, um, yeah, I think he's a little bit haunted about that decision now, but I get it. It's when we're working on these things, sometimes it's hard to detach from our art and
Mm.
remember that this is a product for somebody else, not our baby.
Yeah, but in this case, you do you have the right? They have the rights, but you have your name on the music for Spotify. How does the music relation correlate there for you and Way Forward here?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think I can talk about this. I haven't been told that I can't. Um, so Wayforward was actually really kind enough to let me retain soundtrack sales digitally,
Okay.
not physically. They,
Mm,
they own all of that,
yeah.
where they retain the soundtrack rights and
Mm,
royalties for all of the physical merchandise and media.
okay.
Um, and they were kind enough to let me retain digital soundtrack sales,
Mm,
which is awesome, or at least a large portion of that.
yeah.
I had to do some, royalty splits and stuff with other
Yep.
artists and with publishing, but by and large, they let me have that, and that's amazing because
Mm,
technically, since they own rights and the copyrights and everything to
mm,
all
mm,
of the music, they didn't have to give me that.
yeah.
They
But
could have just
that
said,
is
"Yep,
really
thanks for
nice.
all of this, and we're gonna just run with it, and
Yeah.
see you
Bye.
later, bye." So,
Nice having
yeah,
you. Thanks for everything.
exactly. Like, thanks for working on this. It's all
Yeah.
ours now.
That is really impressive. In my opinion, is really impressive for game developers to actually stretch out that, because that's basically going the extra mile the other way towards the composers. And I'm actually really happy to hear about this. I haven't heard that much because of people. Some people actually have the NDA and such and can't talk about it, while some others are very open with it. So it's always interesting to hear because every composer has their own unique experiences together with game developers and such.
Yeah, it's
So
always different.
yeah, definitely. So and that goes even if the next composer is talking to Wayforward, it can be different for that person as well. So we just have that said as well. This is maybe a unique thing that you kind of got together with them for and so on,
Yeah.
and everything will go from case to case, and that is basically
Yes.
how the industry works.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Every company has their own way. Every project has their own way. It all depends.
Yeah, but I'm just happy to hear that it goes back and forth all the time. So I'm just super happy about that.
Me too.
Yes. So with that said, I think I don't have any further questions about this one, other than I think we should play the last track of the week. And this is a pretty special one, as we said in the beginning. This is going to be the last track of the week, and this is not a track specifically you did. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the featuring part and how that kind of felt after we listened to Can't Quit the River City Girls end credits.
Some girls are sweeties who will fill your life with joy. Some girls will break your heart, leave you crying on the street destroyed. But I don't like those girls. Don't need them in my world. I need a special girl you don't find every day. I don't need an overachiever. Right now, bad girls are just bad news. What I'm looking for is a special class of girl who can kick my ass. I need myself a River City girl.
Can't Quit the River City Girls, the end credits featuring Nate Wants to Battle. Okay, so first of all, actually why I picked this one was because I wanted to have a track where we have one of the other featured artists. But as we noticed in the beginning of this episode, Megan did not create any of these. But we're still going to talk a little bit around these. And I think it's interesting to know that you actually did work on a little bit of features here together with. And one of my questions was actually how did these collaborations work and so on. I will actually skip my inner journey on this one because since you didn't do anything, it doesn't really add anything to the flavor here. So let's actually head into so when it comes to these collaborations, you did not know anything about these until like the end of the process then?
So they
Or were you hinted at all at some point?
I knew that a few different tracks were going to be handled by different artists, and I knew Chipsel was going to do most of the boss fights. I knew that Christina V and Nate Wants to Battle were going to work on, the intro and outro credit songs, and I knew Dale North was going to be doing the arcade tracks. So I knew, I had that in mind already from the very beginning. I did not really get to hear any of their work until the end. Pretty much I was finished with all of my work before I got to hear any single one of their pieces, which was kind of interesting.
And you're like, what? You only did one song on 9 months?
So, I mean, that was interesting because we all created separately and, contributed to this album in, various amounts, obviously. But yeah, I mean, we all did our thing separately in a vacuum, and I put everything together at the very end for distribution. So yeah, it was just kind of an interesting process to be so removed from the other components of the soundtrack.
Yeah. I was going to ask, it's like, oh, did you hear anything about Dale North? Because he did some arrangements and so on. But yeah, I guess Dale kept you in the dark as well then.
He did, yeah. I mean, I knew he was going to be involved, and I knew what he was going to be doing, but I did not hear his work until the very end.
So just being on an album together with these featured artists, I know they all have their own kind of thing. I mean, Chipsel is quite famous for all the chiptune kind of music she does. Nate Wants to Battle and Christina V is super famous on YouTube for their vocal renditions and covers of different kind of animes and such. Well, they also kind of voice act both of them as well, which is impressive. So there's a lot of things. I'm a little bit unsure about Dale. I know I've heard his name somewhere, but I'm a little bit unsure exactly what he has been working on. Maybe you know?
He's worked on a lot of things, and I can't pull up anything from my memory precisely. But if you look him up, he's very prolific. He's done a lot.
Yeah. I can guess so as well, because I do remember his name. I don't know why specifically. That's the only part. So it's super interesting. But just having your name on an album like this, you have a lot of tracks, and you also have these featured artists. How does it feel to actually be on an album together with these featured artists as well, even though you didn't per se collaborate together with them?
I mean, it's great. I like the variety that it brought to the album. I think it's cool now that if I wanted to get in touch with any of these people to actually do a collaboration, I probably could do that. So, yeah, I mean, the more the merrier. I think it kept the soundtrack that much more dynamic. There were varying opinions. Some people were like, it was a little weird to have all of these flavors that, kind of go together, but some people loved the variety. So I think it's just an opinion thing. But yeah, it was cool to get to hear other artists' take on, certain areas and themes.
Yeah, right now I just wish I could hear the other people talk about it. Did they hear your music anything and try to collab, or did they just, for example, Christina V and I guess Nate Wants to Battle did the intro because of the rocky part of it. Nate Wants to Battle did the ending that we just heard. Chipsel did all the boss battles, and Dale North some of the arrangements and such. And I think Chipsel is the most prominent one because she did work on, the gameplay itself, because she worked on the boss battles, where Nate Wants to Battle and Christina V only worked on intro and the ending one, and Dale North did the arrangement part. So I think Chipsel and Dale North played a larger part within the actual dynamic of the soundtrack rather than just the beginning and the ending.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, because the beginning and the ending kind of sticks out because, looking at the intro here, we're actually getting a full anime kind of thing going on, and it's just freaking mind-blowing. And then in the end, we only get smaller kind of sticker things and rolling credits and just have this music on. But we do get a couple of cinematics within the game as well, so I guess you're the one who did those part as well.
I did, yes.
Yes. Was there any specific thing that kind of stuck out when you did those that kind of differentiate from the original content from the gameplay, or did you just follow along with the same kind of structure?
Well, I mean, they were more traditional film scoring techniques, I guess, where I had, a scene, had to highlight certain emotional points of the scene and go, linearly from A to B. So in that sense, it definitely differentiated instead of sitting down to do a track and making it a unit that would loop upon itself and just, provide sort of atmosphere. The cutscenes definitely had a trajectory, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because I'm guessing, usually when it comes to game development, I'm pretty sure that the cinematic parts did not come very early in the process. I guess they came later when you were working on, because I'm guessing you were working on the music for different regions and areas in the game. And then by the end, when you're starting to get more of the story, you get the cinematics and you can put music on them. So I'm guessing that you already had the whole kind of personality of the soundtrack when you got to these tracks.
Yeah, I think this was sort of in the last third of producing the soundtrack that I was able to see the animations.
Yeah. So you saw the animations and then made the music, or did you get like these classic when you only see boxes of what they're supposed to do? Because I'm guessing you need the animation kind of to kind of put music with.
Yeah, that's fair. I saw a nearly finished cut of all of the animations. So the boss intro animations and the cinematics, I saw pretty much they were, locked. The edits were locked when I got them.
Were there any difference in when you kind of put the music on top of this? Did they add something extra with sound design or something like that on top of it for the finished product? Or did you do everything for these cinematic parts?
It's hard to remember. I didn't do any sound design, and I think there is some sound design in the cinematics. There's definitely sound design for the boss intros.
Yeah.
The like whooshes and punching sounds and, Miss Suzu breaks through a wall. Like I didn't do any of that.
Yeah. Okay.
But the music part, I definitely did.
Yes. And then like one of the last questions, just so I'm trying not to kind of forget it at the same time I'm thinking about it. But when it comes to since where you kind of started out was in film scoring and short films and so on, so you kind of returned to your roots while working on this soundtrack and especially working with the cinematics. Then, how does it feel to actually return to that kind of place of yourself that where you kind of started out to work on?
It's great. I still love doing film projects. I actually did a TV pilot last year, and it was like, oh yeah, I remember, I remember why I got into this in the first place. It's just, I mean, I'm still getting to compose and produce music, and ultimately that's the joy for me, regardless of if it's a game or a film. But yeah, it was kind of nice, especially after composing so many looping tracks, to finally do something a little more linear towards the end.
Oh, that sounds absolutely lovely, to be honest. It's fun to hear you say that. So, well, we discussed a lot about this soundtrack. It was really fun hearing your everything about it, but it was actually quite a while since you did complete all the soundtracks and sent them in to Wayforward. How does it feel today, actually getting more and more followers, I guess, each day that loves your music, both original, but maybe some actually come into your original music through listening to this soundtrack, for example?
Yeah, actually, a lot do.
Yeah.
I would say a very large majority of my fan base has been because of this game, which is incredible. It's so funny because people are like, oh, I didn't know you did this, this, and this before, or I didn't know you had these other things. It just takes that one project that has the, the power or the reach besides, it takes that one project to catch people's attention, even if even if you had been working for 10 years prior. So it's funny that I'm grateful. People are great, and it's really given me a platform to showcase my other work, which has been awesome.
I think that we have two factors here that are really good for you. First of all, we have a soundtrack that actually is kind of connected to your original work as well, synthwave-ish kind of take on it. Because that was actually one of the takes that you drew me into your original work as well. Because I just said that, I really like this this soundtrack, and you're like, you should listen to my other work, and then you just posted me your Spotify list on Twitter. I was like, well, definitely gonna check this out. And then I just checked it out, and I was mesmerized by that music as well. So
Thank you.
I mean,
Glad.
it seems like you're very social as well, trying to get together with the community you're creating around your music as well. How connected are you actually? How much hours do you usually put into getting more and more people and interact with fans?
I try my best to answer every comment and question and direct message as much as I can. It's becoming harder, obviously, as the pool of people grows.
Yeah.
And, my visibility goes up. But I mean, I try to engage with people as much as possible because they're the ones that are going to be recommending me. They're the ones that are going to be purchasing my music or supporting me and recommending me to other people. So I genuinely like interacting with my fans.
Definitely. And for like future reference as well, do you like working with freelance, or do you have like a longing feeling that you want to be in-house someday for a video game or movie company?
I love being freelance, but if the right opportunity for an in-house position presented itself, I would definitely consider it. It would just have to be the right fit.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, nice. And with that said, I don't think I have anything else to say or ask about when it comes to the River City Girls soundtrack. So basically, for the ending here, is there anything else you wanna kind of pull out there? Is there any work you can talk about today, or maybe recently releases?
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone listening has heard and likes River City Girls, I just recently in May released an album of my own work. It's the first full-length release that I've done that wasn't for a game or a film or a client. So it felt amazing to finally get that out there. It's a dark, moody electropop album called Inner Demons, and I highly suggest you check it out. I have a lot of different influences. This one is kind of like if Old Frap, Depeche Mode, and Massive Attack got together and did an album.
Oh, it is really good. I did listen to it, and I really did enjoy it. So
Awesome, thank you.
Just like an extra thing, it is a little bit darker than the River City Girls, but it still has definitely the same kind of feeling and vibe to it, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah, this one, I mean, I tend, in my own work, I tend to go dark. That sort of peeked through in a few River City tracks. So this is just, me doing me. And it tends to be darker.
No, but that is nice. So if somebody wants to get in contact with you, if they want to keep asking another question about the River City Girls, for example, or any other question they might get if they're listening to your Spotify and all the original work you did, is there any way they can get in contact with you?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can email me. You can, ask me on Twitter or Instagram. I'm on Twitter, I'm Megan McDuffie. On Instagram, I'm Meg McDuffie. And my website is meganmcduffie.com. And my email is on there as well as a contact form. So I'm everywhere.
So if there are any indie devs out there that needs more synthwave to there, Megan is ready for you.
I also do full orchestral arrangements. Remember, I have a film scoring degree. So that is
Let's
also an option.
So if Moon Studio wants to make Orion the next forest or something.
Oh yeah, I'd be all over that.
I want another Oregon.
I would love to do something horror or sci-fi. I love dark, gritty
I think
stuff.
synthwave can be really good in a horror game, especially sci-fi, because it's just too good. Or maybe a racing game.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of that, there is an indie game. I think they're still working on it. Fingers crossed, called Dead Lane. And it combines racing and horror. It is a horror racing game, and it's the coolest concept, and I hope they keep going.
And you hope they soon call you as well, maybe.
I do. I did. They actually licensed a piece of mine for their Kickstarter trailer.
Ooh.
So fingers crossed that they keep going, and at some point they give me another call.
Oh, that's nice. Let's hope for that one. So, is there anything else you wanna throw out there, or do you feel like you wanna take a rest now after this long interview?
I have some pressing stuff to do for Atari actually right now. So I think we covered lots of things. But on that note, yeah, look for Atari's new announcements coming very soon. I'm actually releasing a single from the massive soundtrack that I'm doing for them on August 31st. So look for that.
That is amazing. That is awesome. So, with that said, thank you so much, Megan, for coming in here talking about the River City Girls soundtrack. It's been an amazing time with you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so with that said, other episodes of Finally Game Music, you'll find those on our homepage, videospelsklubben.se, Spotify, or in your closest podcast app. Feel free to follow or comment any of our social medias, either Facebook or Instagram. Just search for Finally Game Music and it'll get you there. And if you would like to hear your name within one of these episodes, then feel free to request a song for an upcoming episode by commenting on any of our social medias. And you can also support this podcast for future content and quality upgrades. But in the future, we're going to cover future composers. So think about that when you're becoming a Patreon. And our current awesome Patreon backers that we have today is Mikael Sjöberg, Andreas Nilsson, and Daniel Onemark. Thank you so much for being a part and supporting this podcast. So links where you can either buy or support Megan that did the music, and also all her links for social medias and stuff, you will find those in our main post on videospelsklubben.se. So the next theme for the next week is going to be a remix special, and this is going to be the volume number 4. And Megan, do you have any experience with remixes for video game music?
I sure do, Chris.
Do you have any favorite one?
Definitely the one I did for Materia Collective's Banjo-Kazooie tribute album. I did a track based on my favorite level from that game, which is Mad Monster Mansion. The original soundtrack was done by Grant Kirkhope, who is a friend of mine and an awesome guy. But yeah, that's my take.
I definitely want to talk to him someday as well. He seems super wholesome, that dude.
He's great. It's awesome.
Yeah, so with that said, there's nothing else than to wish everybody who's listened to this podcast a really great week, and hope all of you guys be back for next week's episode. So have a good time, everybody. See you all guys next time.